Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date is 9/28/2022. Special report new. This is a new YouTube channel for me. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share. Episode 421. Dr. William Mount, Gene Decode, the N1-N2 pipeline, Sabotage, Bahoo. Some of my sources are God in the Bible, Patriot subscribers, Israeli News Live, Dr. William Mount, Gene Decode, Dark Outpost, a recent interview of Cassidy, a recent interview by David Nino Rodriquez of 107, a Steve Quayle site, and some Hal Turner information. So, let's get started. Okay, we have Israeli News Live, Stephen Benoon, formerly with the CIA, now has a ministry, regularly gets updates from the Pentagon. So Israeli News Live, N1, N2, that was the pipeline by Russia. I'll be drawing a map shortly. That was recently sabotaged. That would have been shipping natural gas, I believe, to Germany. And now the German economy is destroyed, and the German people, by December, according to Scott Ritter, a Marine, retired military analyst, will be freezing to death in their homes. All that based on the decisions their unelected government politicians made with regard to sanctions against Russia. But when the sanctions weren't working, and it appeared that negotiations between Germany and Russia might result in Russia renewing and selling the natural gas to Germany to keep its economy going, and thus the economy of the rest of Europe, and to keep their children safe and warm this winter. Then it appears that nefarious forces upon this earth blew up those pipelines. Let's talk about it. Okay, so Stephen Benoon says yes, the Pentagon says, yeah, looks like it was sabotage. Now we have JB, the actor puppet of the deep state, operating as a front for the shadow U.S. government, who said in July 2nd, 2022, the N2 pipeline will never be allowed to operate. Oh, and Victoria Nuland, part of the shadow U.S. government State Department, said when December 7 of 21, N2 will not be allowed to operate. Let's talk about Victoria Nuland a little bit, okay? And Ukraine. Because I had a Patriot subscriber who provided information. Now, in 2014, and this NATO plan with the shadow U.S. government and the shadow NATO is operating on a 50-year plan to destroy Europe, Germany, Europe, and other nations. Just destroy them, depopulate them, and then destroy their economies and certainly buy up their land cheaply and take over their resources. So in 2014, Victoria Nuland, representing the shadow U.S. government, shadow U.S. State Department, went to Ukraine. And according to my Patriot subscriber whose wife's family is from Ukraine, there was a coup by the shadow U.S. government who deposed the elected president of Ukraine and put in their own shadow leader, and that Victoria Nuland passed out cookies while there were snipers on the roof of the Capitol building in Kiev who were shooting the Ukraine citizens who were protesting this. Now, a few days later, a video came out that's still up on the Clement site. And Clement is a late Christian prophet who passed, I think, in 2016, early in 2016. And he prophesied also about 2 presidents being in the U.S., and he came to, it was 2014, just a few days after this coup took place in Kiev. And it's on his video. His guides, Ukraine guides, were saying, yeah, if you'd been here a few days ago, you would have seen the snipers on the roof. So that's going on. So, Victoria Nuland and the JB puppet both have declared that Nord Stream 2 pipeline will never be allowed to operate. So now let's see what's going on. We've got Russia. We have a landmass that comes around something like this. We've got Russia. We've got Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Kaliningrad, Belarus, and then it goes down into Ukraine. Over here we've got a landmass, something like this. Finland, Sweden, Norway. We've got Denmark right here, a landmass that comes down like this. We've got Poland. We've got Germany. Now, this is the Baltic Sea. Up here, I think it's called the Gulf of Finland. And we had those 2 pipelines, N1, the Nord Stream 1, the Nord Stream 2, that came down. There was a little Denmark island right here, and came down to Germany, just like this. And actually, Nord Stream 1 is 2 pipelines, and this is 1, so that was a total of 3 pipelines that were taken out by blast a few days ago. Now, the German government and investigators came out and said, yeah, it appears to be sabotage. And we have a lot of other investigators saying sabotage, and nations and governments saying sabotage. Now, we had Hal Turner came out with this information. The USS Kearsarge was seen in this area reportedly a few days ago. But according to my information, the USS Kearsarge, which is an amphibious ready ship, participated in a NATO exercise that was in May of 2022, and it was called the Neptune Shield, and it would have been in this area in sometime in May. It could have been, and it's been recently in Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Lithuania, May through August. So now this is September. So the Kearsarge has been in the Baltic area. Now we have Dr. William Mount coming up and talking about the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. Talking about Canada had suddenly stopped rebuilding the turbines that would have gone to Germany to repair the Nord Stream 1 and 2, or the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. I don't think the Nord Stream 2 had come online. And also he's reporting Poland is no longer siding with NATO. They have backed away. And I brought out on a recent video that Poland was expecting to take some Polish areas back from Ukraine when Russia takes over all of Ukraine and divides some of the Ukraine to Belarus, some to Poland, some to Hungary, some to Romania. Okay, so these nations that had been aligned with NATO are now aligning with Russia. Okay, so what Dr. William Mount is saying is, his information is that with regard to the N1-N2 sabotage, his info is involved the German Navy. And then we have that information from Hal Turner about the Kearsarge, a U.S. vessel. Now, Dr. William Mount goes into detail about how the explosives were set, and it is my opinion that neither the regular German Navy officers nor the U.S. regular military on board those ships were active participants in an active sabotage against the pipelines of Russia. Do I believe that deep state actors who were operating in collusion with the German government, the German military, the U.S. shadow government, the U.S. shadow military, do I believe that they could have used these two groups to plant the explosives? Absolutely. I do believe that. So, that's going on. I think it's good to find out which actors are involved and what's going on. So definitely the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 appears to be acts of sabotage, not perpetrated by the German Navy, but perhaps their vessels were used, and not perpetrated by the U.S. military and the Kearsarge, but perhaps their vessels were used, or perhaps their ships were simply used as a cover for a third party to plant the explosives. Definitely an act of sabotage. Okay. So now we have this. Dr. William Mount is bringing this out. The U.S. shadow government will be bankrupt by midnight of September 30. So the shadow NATO and the shadow U.S. government and other deep state groups are trying desperately to get a declaration of war going between Russia and NATO and the U.S. by this time. So that's going on. Now, Gene Decode is bringing out this information that we have a mainstream media from Slovakia. I looked at some of his stream, and the people in Slovakia seem to be awake, and they are backing away from being a member of NATO. And other Baltic nations are saying no to NATO. We wanted to give billions of dollars to like 18 nations, and in that Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania and other nations, and they're saying no. No. I think awake and aware people are beginning to see that you cannot trust the shadow U.S. government, the shadow NATO. Look what they're doing to Germany and Europe, destroying them. Look what they are doing in Ukraine with their expressed desire to let every Ukraine man, woman, and child die before the shadow NATO will move away from its acts of military operation going on inside Ukraine. So I believe other nations in that area are becoming aware. You cannot trust the shadow NATO. You cannot trust the shadow U.S. government and other shadow U.S. governments around the world who are intent on slaughtering people, taking over their resources. So that's going on now. Inside Ukraine, you had 4 areas just vote to become part of Russia, and that's Luhansk, Donetsk, the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia area. And with this, Russia gains roughly 9 million people and roughly 108 kilometers squared of land. And what Ukraine loses is 21% of their population and 20% of their land. Now, Dr. William Mount has information about other areas, and I believe Scott Ritter also expressed opinions, and I've seen other maps. For Kharkiv, Odessa, and apparently there's some other areas. Dr. Mount said there's 4 other large areas that want to join Russia. And we've seen that earlier map with Russia taking over this much, Moldova, Transnistria, Belarus taking some, Poland taking some, Hungary taking some, and Romania taking some. So that's shaping up. Now what we have going is we have Russia mobilizing publicly. They're saying 300,000. 107 and Mike from around the world, who's regularly on Pastor Paul Begley's Thursday night program, we believe Mike works for the NSA, Mike knows stuff, says, so Mike said Russia could call up 1 to 1.5 million. 107 is saying now they're mobilizing 1 million. So we have that going on, and Gene Decode is reporting that a general high up in the Russian military says, wait until the leaves fall. In other words, all the leaves fall off the trees. Individuals in the green and brown camouflage cannot hide, and Russia's equipment and their weapons and their weather gear is all ready for the oncoming very cold and very early coming winter. We know that Ukraine had requested from the United States 200,000 winter outfits for their military. So, we'll have to see, because we understand now that the U.S. military is depleted in its weapons stock. Now I have to believe that there are white hats inside the U.S. military. We understand 70% are aligned with President Trump and recognize him as Commander-in-Chief. 30% are shadow. And I submit it's this 30% who believe they've shipped all of the U.S. weapons to Ukraine. I think this part of the U.S. military prudently has hidden sufficient weapons to defend the United States of America. And that information, this comes from also Carrie Cassidy, a recent interview she had with Outpost. Okay. And what Carrie is also bringing out is that we can look forward to the EBS being operated October 29. That's Carrie Cassidy's intel. And we know that, I believe it was in January, that the Delta and Ranger U.S. military forces went into Mount Weather, located close to Washington, D.C., and took out 12 of the FEMA guards and took over the emergency broadcast system that was located in that area. So we see things are ready to go, and that after this occurs, President Trump will be formally brought back. We will have elections in 120 days. So that supports these statements by multiple sources, no mid-November elections. So it's a wonderful time to be alive, and I think it's good to be up to date with what is truth. This concludes my special report. I love you, and I'll see you soon.